to the March board meeting of Ignite CDA. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. All stand and remove any hats. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And now is time for public comment. Anybody have any public comment? Please come forward, state your name and address.
James Fillmore, 1215 East Lakeshore Drive in Coeur d'Alene. I'm here representing myself. I know the Young property is not on the agenda tonight, but as far as I understand, it's not a closed issue, so I have some short comments on that. While Coeur d'Alene has several recently refurbished parks and more park open space is being developed along the Spokane River, the downtown core is developing higher density housing. Thus, what was sufficient open space in the past may not handle the public need going forward. The Young property is a perfect opportunity to convert low-density housing into open space, counterbalancing some of the high-density development occurring very near it. We all know that there is value in open space, be it fully developed parks with pavilions, playgrounds, splash pads, skate parks or dog parks, or simple open space for meeting with friends or quiet reflection. Even some open space is even undeveloped and used for water runoff and wildlife buffer zones. The Young property seems, again, like a perfect opportunity for the middle ground. Green lawn space there would allow some simple, unstructured play, some quiet time, and perhaps some water runoff absorption areas from the developed parts of McEwen Park and the nearby parking lot. It would be a buffer zone from forested Tubbs Hill to the urban zone very nearby. I'm sure many of the Ignite CDA board members are aware of studies that show parks and preserved open space boost land values and property taxes. Parks and open space boost local economies by attracting residents and businesses. Nearby open space promote exercise and reduce health costs. I can't take the time to go into the details of these studies, but if you have any doubt, please inquire further. In summary, please strongly consider making the Young property permanent open space and part of Tubbs Hill Park or McEwen Park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Thank you. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the February 20th board meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the February 20th board meeting minutes.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion, corrections?
I have a question.
Mr.
Well, I was gone. Is it appropriate to vote to approve the minutes at a meeting that you weren't there?
Sure. I've always wondered that.
I mean, they look like nice minutes, but
If you've been able to review the minutes, the meeting minutes, and you've had enough time to review, and you think those
And
give
watch
you
the
a good
video.
description, yeah.
Yep.
okay.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. Motion carries. Next, the selection of the Midtown Development Proposal. Tony's going to kick this off.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and start the conversation, provide some background on the issue, and then Commissioner Garcia will take it from there. So as you recall, up on the screen is the land area that was included in the RFP. It's surrounded by the red block, the bare land parcels we own, plus the 823 4th Street building. As you recall, we received two development proposals for this project area, the Midtown Ventures proposal and the DeChase Miskus proposal. At the February board meeting, Commissioner Garcia shared that the agency has received two viable project proposals and sees no reason not to pursue one of the projects. She felt the board needs to choose one proposal and move forward. To that end, she suggested that within the next 2 weeks, which was by March 6th, interested Midtown stakeholders should provide specific written feedback to the board regarding the two proposals. I received, or the agency received, feedback from 19 individuals, and that feedback was forwarded to the board for their review, for your review. So with that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Garcia to entertain the conversation regarding these proposals.
So conversation is, I'd like to have a conversation about what you guys your comments, thoughts about the two proposals we received, both through the written proposal and the presentation, and just where you're coming from at this point.
Anybody? Comments? Questions?
Jim's ready.
I think they were both very well done presentations, that one of them seemed to represent the green space a little further than the other. Also, the timeline for completion on one was far better than the other. I don't know if we want names right now, but there was one that, to me, that exceeded the other. And I personally have made a decision. Are we looking for a name?
We're looking for your view, your
My view is
opinion.
one
your
was
opinion.
outstanding. Both were good, one was outstanding.
I don't think it's out of line to know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
no,
which
you
Well,
need to know
okay,
too.
all right. Again, I wasn't sure of process. So
Yeah, no.
the John Butler, in my opinion, was far exceeded the other one.
You
They
mean
both,
the Midtown Ventures?
the Midtown Ventures,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. It just seemed like it met well, first of all, the input that I saw from Midtown seemed to lean that way also. Its completion period is much quicker. Again, it provides a much larger green space, and I like the proposal. It just seemed to stand out to me.
Any other comments from other board members? No one has an opinion?
I have an opinion, I'm just not, I don't even see a comment, though.
How about opinions?
I know
Yeah,
I'm-
opinions are welcome too.
I would agree. I think the Midtown Ventures was a little better project. I think the green space was a big part of what I looked at. I liked the completion time. I liked the usage of the space. I just thought it was a better project, and that's probably the direction I'm going to go.
It had a bigger footprint also because of the advanced purchase of the property, and I thought that was a big positive too.
And I think the positive too is the funding mechanisms used for Midtown Ventures.
And some advantages on parking. Is that correct for Midtown Ventures?
Yes, yes.
And that seemed to be consistent with feedback from the community as being important. I would say for the DeChase Mixus, I appreciated how responsive they were to the RFP and the criteria. I think in the proposal and presentation, they were very specifically addressing some of our requests. But I agree with Olivia that the funding mechanisms seem more straightforward with the Midtown Ventures. There were some interesting uses or proposals of the commercial space on the Chase Mixus property proposal that I thought were interesting as far as a more dynamic ground level with some ideas around that. But I think I would agree that Midtown Ventures seems like a maybe more efficient, straightforward approach.
Comment?
Thoughts or comments?
So are we looking for a motion? How do you want to proceed?
Yes, on that note, if you are ready to make a motion, I had our legal counsel in Boise draft one up to, for these type of proposals. So here's a draft one he recommended. So based on the review and responses to the RFP and the analysis by the executive director, commissioner motion to select proposal X or A or B as a developer to redevelop the site identified in the Midtown RFP and authorize the executive director and council to commence negotiations to reach a mutually acceptable agreement to negotiate exclusively and bring that agreement back to the board for approval.
I would make that motion using the Midtown Ventures as the proposed developer.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded.
Is that Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
We have some further discussion?
I just want to state as the, I guess, person leading the charge from the subcommittee standpoint that I also very much appreciated both proposals and the time and thought. DeChase Mixus definitely got boots on the ground and put together a very nice proposal and addressed all the issues that we were looking for. My concern with their proposal from my standpoint was that part of it hinges on unforeseen and unknowable acquisition of the Idaho Youth Ranch property and taking out one of the two parking lots that we currently have where we know that parking's kind of a bit of an issue up there. So I didn't want to be the one as the chair of the committee to make the comments until the motion was made. So that's my position. I'm in agreement with with the suggestion of the board. And I would like to thank Midtown for making the time and taking the time to submit their comments and their opinions of the projects, and they really did just, in my opinion, validate the direction that this board has chosen to go. So thank you very much to the Midtown citizens for taking the time to share with us your thoughts.
Thanks for that, Sarah, and thanks for leading that committee. So,
You're welcome.
Mr. Jordan?
I just say really quick, the reason I'm in favor of Midtown Ventures is for the reasons you've stated here, and it takes a lot of work to do one of these submittals, these RFPs, and so I really appreciate the time that both parties put into this. And neither plan is a bad plan. They're both good plans, and either one could work. I just, for various reasons stated, I favor the Midtown Ventures plan. But thanks to everybody, though, for your time to submit this. I appreciate it.
Okay. Any other comments or words of wisdom? All in favor with the motion as presented? Say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, the motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, just as closure to this, so following up on the motion, just to kind of share with you the next steps in the process, I'll work with legal counsel to craft the agreement to negotiate exclusively that we discussed with Midtown Ventures. This agreement will set parameters for the disposition and development agreement. That's that DDA that we have to implement in order to divest of the property. The DDA will set forth the definitive terms of both the divestiture of the agency property to Midtown Ventures, including any additional agency agreed to financial participation in the proposed project. And that we'll bring that back over the next X amount of months. We'll negotiate those time frames and kind of get the process rolling.
Thank you. And also, I would like to really thank the Midtown people for being patient for so many, maybe decades, been a long time, but I think we have a great project going forward, so thanks.
I'd like to just make one comment on it. You know, I mean, there's a few of us have been on this board for a while now, and this has been contentious at times, but I think it's finally come to a very good conclusion. And I also would like to thank everybody from Midtown, from various other areas that have been so active and participated in the decision and discussion that we've gone through to get to this point. And, you know, like I said, sometimes it was not always the most pleasant, but we're at a good point now, and I do appreciate everybody's input going, you know, in the past and going forward. So, thank you.
Good. Moving on. Thanks, everybody. It's good. Mr. Phil Boyd is going to give a presentation on the Atlas Waterfront Public Space Concept Updates and updated master site plan.
I apologize if several of you have seen this before in other venues. I ran into Susie in the hallway and she said, "Not again." So she's popped my bubble a little bit, but I'll try to get excited. It won't take much. Just a review of the project meetings. You guys have seen this slide so many times before, but I think it's good because it keeps us on track, gives us an understanding of where we're at in the process. Those last two blue ones is where we're headed here on number 13, is where we are today. Number 14 is on the 28th. So some of the information you're going to see tonight, Tony asked me to present it in preparation for you to see it again on the 28th. But the objective being, now you'll have seen it, you'll have time to think about it, develop questions in between now and then that Tony and I can respond to if necessary. The 15th is a new meeting you have not seen. We had back here on number 9, we had a planning and zoning meeting here on a workshop, and the Planning and Zoning Commission really liked it, and they liked the content so much, and they liked the direction where the development standards were headed. They asked if we could come back and do another workshop that gave them some more understanding of good urban design principles, because this is such a comprehensive, big project. They really wanted to dig into that. So we'll be back on the April 4th.
Phil, can I just interrupt you for a second? I've asked Phil to kind of give a little bit more detail tonight because I know some of you will not be able to attend the workshop next week. So I just want to make sure that you guys are thinking, get this information and start to kind of think about it as we kind of march down this path on looking at project funding for the Lake District.
Good. Okay. Okay, so moving on, you have seen this slide before. This is our current configuration. One of the things you'll see that's a little bit different as I move through some of the subsequent slides is right now you see Suzanne come down like this. And we've told you about the soils exploration that we're doing in the Mount Hink area to determine where we might be able to find additional development land. We believe there's cost-effective development land right in here. And so this road now continues on into this area. And I attempt to point these little changes out as we move. I think everyone understands and appreciates the project as an evolution. We're working through it as more data and science becomes available. So if you see something that you don't recognize, where did that come from? Don't hesitate to stop me and say, where did that come from?
Phil, will it still turn and come towards the river, or will it just be straight now?
It'll still come down through the river. It'll come, it's a good question. It'll continue straight through like this, and then we'll still have this turn coming this direction. This is a really great view, I think, as you guys know, and we want to retain that as we can. It also sets up some really nice parcel layout here, and I'll show you a slide of that in a second. One other thing I'll point out why I'm here is this parking lot, we've still retained this. Our hope is to make that go away. We're working on a total site parking count and analysis. That's one of the things we heard at our workshop last Friday with City Council and Parks and Rec. City Council is concerned about parking, the neighborhood parking, the Midtown situation that we have, the Fort Grounds area, the things that happens with neighborhood parking when you have great public spaces like this. We're going to focus on trying to put the parking in this area and expand this parking lot and not have to do anything there. We may have on-street parking here, and we may end up on waterside on-street parking here. It's not our first choice, but as you know, we're trying to strike a balance between open space and great views and functionality. Wanted to update the board. We have talked before about grants that we're pursuing on behalf of the city and the Ignite. We submitted a grant application today to Restoration Partnership. We've been working closely with them. And these are the projects that we submitted on. 1, 2, 3 is interpretive signage, and 4 is the waterfront access area here. We work closely with their staff ahead of time. Don't get too excited that we might get all this, that we may get some, we may get none of this funding in here, but they suggested that we put it in a menu like this. There's quite a narrative that goes with this that Tony has, that he received in the email, but we're pursuing that. So the numbers that you see later on in the presentation, there's the potential that they could go down if the grant funding comes through. This does fit in the wheelhouse very nicely of Restoration Partnership because we're restoring the shoreline and stabilizing erosion and doing a lot of things that are what they support, giving human access to the water. So we're hopeful, but as you guys know, there's no promises with grants. I know this is not a very exciting drawing to look at, but it's a work in progress drawing. This is part of our development standard work, and it shows the evolution of the lot layout to get to a master plat. The master plat is the document that sets up the proposed lot layout by block and the density. And so we want to be, the board wants to be in the position to have the maximum density in your master plat. So you can see some of these parcels in here we've loaded up. In here you might remember there was single family lots in there, but we've loaded up that block to be set up for townhomes. Probably not what will go in there. It's probably not the appropriate mix, but we also don't know exactly what will happen on the waterfront here. It could be that these go to single family. The objective with the master plat is to give the board maximum flexibility for the disposition of the property. So we want to be on the high end of density get it approved that way, and then the board can choose to dispose of the property based on the way that the RFP comes in by block. Because remember, the blocks will be, the property will be disposed of by block. And then the developer will come in and make a proposal at that time and say, I think I'd like to do single family here. And another developer might say, I'd like to do townhomes here. That makes sense to everyone, and it's just kind of again, a progression of where we're headed. The Clean and Green project, we've talked about this a number of times. This is the project that the board has currently budgeted funding for. This is the list of items that are in the Clean and Green version. It starts down in here on the east end, continues through here. The beach and whatnot, or the vegetation that currently exists there would stay that way. There's no beach restoration in this area. A couple of nice trails that move through the site, one paved, one gravelled, irrigation system, mass grading to straighten things up out there, which we've done a good portion of. Some greens, some turf in this area, potentially some rain gardens and natural plantings in this area. But this was driven by the financial feasibility study, because the project had to pencil. So we built the revenue side, but the expense side was still too high. So we had to peel elements out, and you can't take out a sewer line, you have to have that. So we had to pull out park amenities. And so that's where we're at here on the Clean and Green version, and have been since November of 2018. But it's just, again, I'm trying to provide the complete picture, because I know you guys kind of touch this a couple times a month maybe, to remind everyone where we're at. Through these, and these Dell brought last at the Parks and Rec meeting on Monday. There are some renderings of what the restrooms might look like. This is maybe a fancier version of what we see down at Memorial. It's the same footprint. So the new restroom that's down at Memorial and the picnic shelter, same configuration. What we had heard from our steering committee and from the Parks and Rec Commission is, can you pull in the imagery and harken back to what the mill structures might have looked like? This is pretty literal interpretation, but this is not my department. I think it will have some evolution to it. The Parks and Rec Commission was diplomatically quiet when they saw that. There was another version that was modern, but that one got easily shot down, so I didn't show you that one. This is another view of it, and you see the picnic shelter, and the restrooms are back in that area. Okay, potential additional improvements. As you all know, the Lake District has potentially funding available. Tony has asked the city, could you give the board some indication of what you might like to see funded? The mayor turned to the Parks and Rec Commission and said, on the park side, will you please give us some indication on what you might like to see funded in the Lake District? And so that's what I'm going to show you now, both in Atlas and in the BLM Four Corners area, because both of those public spaces are in the Lake District. So the improvements here are improvements that were identified during the master plan. For the most part, they're improvements that were well received by the community during the master planning, and also during our public open houses and our workshops. We just have not had a lot of negative response at this point, now that we've cleared out some of the more controversial elements, primarily the road that extended through to over to Beebe. And you might recall I briefed the board on that last month, kind of the progression on where we had the roads, why we had the roads, and why the roads have gone away that connect down to Beebe. Let's see here. I'm not going to go through each one of these because I think most of you have seen them, but those are the areas that follow up with the numbers that are here. The Prairie Trail Underpass, this is a pretty big number here, and it is just what you imagine. The trail would drop under Suzanne. The grade, the way that the grade is situated out there lends itself to that. So we thought it's, as underpasses go, it's pretty cost-effective to build it that way. It still seems like a really big number. These numbers are conservative. The reception we've received for it is lukewarm. I think Parks and Rec and even the Pedestrian Bicycle Committee at the city says, gosh, it would be our only underpass on the trail system. It would be nice, but is that the best use of the public's money? So that's the feedback, kind of in a nutshell, that we've received from them.
Could you just kind of share with the board kind of what you mean by conservative?
Sure, I'm sorry. Yeah, the conservative, when I use the word conservative, I mean we're estimating on the high side. And just a little thing, a note about the estimates, we're way high. We're at the 30,000 foot level, so we're putting big round numbers at these based on areas and some calculations. But when you get into design level detail, you get into real detailed quantity takeoffs. We're not at that point, because what's the point of doing that? If the board says, geez, we're not interested in an underpass, well, there's no point in doing a detailed estimate. We've done a couple of these just over the years. The last one we did was up on Bottle Bay Road, you know, and I think it was like an $800,000 project, but it was also an ITD project, and it was much more elaborate. So those are the types of things that we're working off of, the numbers we're working off of. This other category, this first category are really elements that the public, we presented to the public was responded to positively, and they're park elements. You go out, you build them, people enjoy them, and the city continues to pay to maintain them. There's a second category that has the potential to generate revenue. And this category came out of our steering committee meetings when we were looking at all of this, and our steering committee members are saying, gosh, Bill Greenwood, you know, this is going to cost money to maintain these. How will you fund that? Well, currently it comes through tax revenue, some of their parking fees. Are there other opportunities? And so we started brainstorming those and looking for opportunities that both solve a problem potentially in the city, respond to a commercial need that Bill hears about. One of them is food truck vendors. You know, the food truck vendors want a place to go. So we laid in an area right up here that would be pointed towards the green space. You could pull 3 or 4 food trucks in there. They'd have power hookups to them. And now you've got the opportunity to add a little action with food truck vendors. The board might recall we actually put 2 of those out Memorial. So if you go to Memorial next time and look for the power pedestals, there's a place that Bill can lease those food truck areas in that location. This next one, the vendor police building, you might have a paddleboard kayak vendor there. If we're going to build a building, Christy Wood had suggested, is there an opportunity to put a location for the police to go have a presence, do their paperwork, and just be there. Not hard to create a little office off to one side that shows folks that there's a police presence there. It's kind of a double use. The park maintenance building, it would be in this area, and that's one of those ideas, just the economics. If Bill doesn't have to drag equipment there, if it's more efficient for his staff to just go down there, grab the equipment, go use it, and then put it away. So that's another, just a cost reduction in the long run for him. The ones that we've presented early on in the master plan and received some negative feedback were the docks. And we've broken them into a couple of categories. This set of docks right here, there's the opportunity to have day use docks, which generally have received pretty good comments, because I think we all know there's a shortage of places on the lake you can pull up publicly, get out of your boat, go up and use the restroom, go have a beer or a drink of water. And there's another opportunity to put vendors in here. So currently, the folks that rent boats, drag the boats to the 3rd Street launch, offload the boat, people go out and use the boat, they bring it back, the vendor goes back, grabs the boat, pulls it back. And so we all see that all summer long, the boats, vendors running around town pulling boats. Bill's received quite a few requests. Is there a place we could have a dock? Could we go build a dock on your riparian rights? Well, this would be one of those opportunities where you could build the dock and generate revenue off of it. It also supports that commercial property up there. And I think we've talked about that with the board, the value of having those day use docks up in that area. This one here is a little bit on the edge, but it's their annual lease docks. So this might be docks that are leased to the property owners up here. In that way, it doesn't generate a parking requirement because they're for the residents in that area. You can imagine the potential issue that might gin up for the rest of the community is, why can't I lease that city available dock? So there's some leasing issues with it, but it can also generate some pretty good revenue. This wing right here could potentially be a day use dock that might support a commercial use in that area. So that's the thinking behind that group of improvements, because we're trying to populate the Lake District potential projects. These happen to be with Atlas for the board's consideration down the road. Any questions on those before I move on?
Looks good.
This is the summary of the dock revenue that might be generated. These are some numbers Bill and I estimated. On the day use slips, I've talked about that. The annual lease docks could generate a pretty good revenue because on the lake, they're pretty expensive to lease. The vendor boat slips could also generate some pretty good revenue, but one of the other important things to consider is the reduction in congestion in downtown Coeur d'Alene at the 3rd Street launch and just moving around town. You know, instead of seeing people pulling boats all over the place, they might be housed down here. So it has some additional off-site benefits. We're going to move on to the BLM corridor. You guys remember this because you funded this master plan several years ago. The corridor started here at Four Corners and continued through down to this area. Many of the projects you've already accomplished. Memorial Park expansion, Fort Grounds Drive reconfiguration, additional parking. You're currently headed to work on the Memorial Grandstands, skate park. A lot of those elements have been completed in here. In the River to Hubbard segment, there wasn't a lot planned for that. It was primarily landscaping and trail reconfiguration. North Idaho College is funding that. The mayor had negotiated a deal with them to fund that. So a good portion of the projects identified in the master plan between Four Corners and Hubbard will be complete at the end of the summer. From Hubbard to about this side of the bridge, Bill with his crew and with volunteers have gone in and done a lot of the projects that are associated with bikes, the cyclocross course, the pump track, the skills course. So several of those are finished in that area. There's some other ones, and this is just an excerpt out of that master plan, that obviously aren't done, but the world has changed since this master plan was completed. Atlas is now on the table, and it may make more sense to fund projects there. And as Bill and I worked through them with the Parks and Rec Commission, that's the conclusion that they all came up to. So rather than putting docks here, if we're going to put docks anywhere, let's not put them here because we'd have to add a parking lot. Let's put them down at Atlas where a parking lot already will exist that is currently being funded. So we kind of took that eye and went through this whole area and started analyzing what would be the city's priority for making improvements to La Crosse. One option is to just leave it there and not do anything with it. But that doesn't make very good use of public space that the city worked pretty hard, along with Ignite, to get into the public realm. The idea would be to go in and pick off the projects that are most important now that could be funded with the Lake District funds. The first project would be this La Crosse piece here. Because obviously if you're going to develop public space, you have to be able to get to it. I broke this into 2 phases. When I presented to the Parks and Rec, I only showed phase 1 because phase 2 is really not a park-related question. Phase 1 would put the bases and the conduits in for the signals here, and it would build the road down in this direction over to here. The road would stop at a gate, so there would be no connection to Bellarive, and it would service this parking lot. This portion of the parking lot would not be built, and the micro soccer that you see over here also would not be built. But the idea is to build the backbone, get people to the park. The second phase of that project, this is the city's public right-of-way that currently exists within the Union Pacific property. It ends approximately in this area. Potentially, that could be funded by the Lake District if the developer that owns the parcel over here, Active West, that you sold, or the Union Pacific decides to do something with their project, the board could consider funding a portion of this roadway. So Tony had asked that we just break it out in those phases so the board could kind of see what's the priority to support the park improvements here, what would be phase 2. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. The parking lot would be a project, obviously, that would be important to support the public space in here. Site remediation with dryland native grasses. In this area and in this area, currently, if I think you've all probably been down there, if you walk that area, it's rocks, knapweed, other weeds that I don't know what they are, and it's not really easily maintainable. One thing to do is go in there, strip all that off, put an irrigation system in, plant turf on it, and now it becomes a maintenance issue for Bill where he's got to go out there and mow it. The idea that Bill had came up with was, well, before we go do any of that, since there's potential improvements down the road here, 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 and just in the rest of this area, let's go out there, we'll call it remediate the site, so pull the rocks out, get the weeds out of there, grade the site, and put dryland grass on it, and let the dryland grass, he can go in and mow it a couple times a year, it'll be in a condition that he can mow it. But it's not a gigantic expense. I know when you look at that, I'm not to diminish that amount of money, but as it goes, that's a pretty big area that we're going to go in and really just grade it and prepare it for hydroseeding in the fall. The lacrosse park restrooms, the idea is if you're going to build the place for public to go, you probably need to have a picnic shelter and a restroom for them. Potentially over here, a riverfront picnic shelter. That's a beautiful spot, and we could use a prefabricated structure there. And then putting in the gravel walking trails. So rather than just having a big area of grass, put some gravel walking trails through it so you can take your dog and go wander around out there. Those are the projects that we presented to the Parks and Rec Commission. They've gone through the process of taking all of these and prioritizing them. This is not their priority. You'll see that on the 28th. This is just a listing of all the projects in here. We broke it out by Atlas, the lacrosse area, and kind of the secondary Atlas projects that have the vendor docks in it. We have the estimated costs here, and then we have a running total. So you can kind of see the impact as we move through those. This is a spreadsheet that Tony put together, and I've essentially taken the prices you saw earlier and populated this spreadsheet. So this has not just the parks projects, because up to this point, all I've been talking about is improvements in public space, park space. Tony has listed on here other projects that he can, I'm sure, give you more background on than I could. But I've put them all in here so you can see there's kind of two categories. This initial category, this was the Four Corners category. I've lined out the ones that the city is saying not necessary at this time, not a priority for us, and then totaled everything up. And you can see the total exceeds what the potential available funding is.
It's always that way, isn't it?
It is that way. So I've sped through that pretty quickly, trying to respect the board's time, and probably with the understanding that most of you might have seen this already, so I apologize for having to listen to me twice. I will tell you that there's a couple upcoming meetings. This one is obviously tonight. There's another one on May 7th, the community room, regular city council meeting that will be rolling this out some more. So I'm glad to answer questions, Chairman Hoskins.
Don't be shy, you guys. Grilling.
Phil, a question I was asked a while back is when they do the clean and green down along the river and the remediation, will there be many of the big mature trees that will be taken out and replaced?
The answer is not many. So you can't see it on the level of drawing on this detail. We went through, because we're very sensitive to that, and everyone on our team is very sensitive to that. And so rather than looking at it kind of globally, we went in and surveyed the location and species of every single tree. So we know the size, condition, is it hanging over the edge, is it ready to fall in? And then our environmental person that's working on this, she went with her team, who includes the hydraulic engineer, and they've identified that tree's on the ragged edge, it's got to come out, let's just not mess with it and take it out. This one we think we can save, and on the saved ones, we'll end up going with Bill and the city forester and saying, we think you can save it, what do you guys think? Because remember, Bill has to own that tree once we all are gone, and so he should really have the final say, in our opinion, on those things. So we're being super strategic about removing the trees. And even in just the generally vegetated areas, if the vegetation is healthy and primarily not a noxious weed, we're leaving it there. Because there's no reason to try to disturb vegetation that's good and in place. If it's a noxious weed, if it's not doing well, it's coming out, the slope's getting regraded, and we're putting appropriate vegetation back in.
Thank you. Anything
Good
further?
job.
Thank you.
Good information. Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
Next up is committee reports. Finance Committee, Commissioner Arman.
Okay, so the finance report's getting smaller by the month, it seems like. So I guess as we close out the Lake District, we'll get really small, other than we're going to start another district. So let's start out with the Lake District balance sheet. The Lake District experienced a $1,296,706 decrease in cash assets from the January month end, due primarily to the biennial debt obligation payments. Fixed assets, no changes for the month. Other assets, the Lake District 2016 Series Note Reserve Account increase was $95 for the month of February. Ice Plant IRA decrease of $26,379. The Chamber of Commerce DDA was a decrease of $1,234. And the 609 Sherman Lofts IRA decrease of $17,024. On the liabilities and fund balance, the bonds, the 2017 Series Note line item value reflects an increase of $254,000 due to a February draw on the note. The tax increment payable IRA DDA line item amounts mirror the same values as under the assets, which we already looked at. All other liability parameters either unchanged or normal for the month, including the 2% credit due to the arts line item due to the county increment check received in February. The Lake District P&L, the Lake District received $69,948 in tax increment revenue from the county in February. Agency funded initiatives, the downtown parking garage line item was $253,905, and the NICE project was $1,303,395. Taxes and increment payments line item value is $45,516, which captures the principal payments for the IRAs and DDA found on the balance sheet, plus the $879 property tax reconciliation payment to the purchaser of the North Park Drive lot number 5. All other P&L expenditure line items are in line with the normal operating for the month. Moving on to the River District, the balance sheet. The assets, the River District experienced a $288,200 decrease in cash assets from the January month end, due primarily to the biannual debt obligation payments. Other assets, Circuit at Saltius IRA decrease of $12,373. The Riverstone West Phase 2 IRA decrease of $54,802. And the Riverstone West 1 OPA decrease of $182,358. The liabilities and fund balance, tax increment payable line item amounts mirror the same values as under the assets, and all other liability parameters are either unchanged or normal due for the month, including the 2% credit due to the arts. The River District P&L, River District received $16,757 in tax increment revenue from the county in February. Professional fees line item value is comprised primarily of legal fees from Holly Troxell and Elam and Burke. Taxes and increment payments line item value of $249,533 captures the principal payments for the IRAs and OPA on the balance sheet. The debt service and interest expense value of $37,508 is broken down. Circuit at Southeast IRA, $4,942. Riverstone West Phase 2 IRA, $17,507. Mill River Seniors IRA, $5640. Riverstone West Apartments IRA, $6,081. And Riverstone West Apartments 3 IRA, $3,338. All other P&L expenditure line items are in line or normal for the month. So that's the P&L for the River District.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to payables. So the payables, we start out with a payment to Elam and Burke for $620. A good portion of this is for the legislative issues and also some of the Stimson Mill Initiative. Holly Troxel was no payments this month, which I'm sure we'll have some next month. Moving on down, we have a fairly large payment for the Atlas Mill Site Initiative of $159,074.25. Part of that, which is $65,850, was the final invoice for the traffic impact study. And further on down, we have the downtown parking structure project, a payment of $421,573, which is also a final invoice. And last but not least, the Four Corner Memorial project, we had $96,680.06 for the North Park subdivision costs. Total value for payables this month, $677,947.31.
Any questions? Thanks, Commissioner Arman. Questions, comments?
I make a motion that we approve the financial statements and the payables for the month of February. March? February, March? Okay, February, March.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thanks, everybody. Motion carries. Parking, Commissioner Jordan.
Mr. Chairman, I was out of town and couldn't make it to the Parking Commission meeting, but they did have one last week and had a quorum, and Commissioner Chapkus was able to attend that. And he has a report for you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jordan. Before I begin, I want to apologize for my almost incoherent thought process on Midtown. I really apologize to Midtown Ventures and to Chase Micus. I was looking for my notes and I couldn't find them, so I had to depend on my memory, which is frankly is almost full. So again, I apologize for not being better prepared. On to parking. A lot going on with parking. Today, we had our new passport system updated in the new parking garage. This is a software update we've been waiting for about 8 weeks. And I don't know the results of the installation yet, but I'm believing they're going to be favorable. The firm we're using seems to be very good and very responsive to our needs. They have about 50 national clients, and they've been in business for about 8 years. Parking passes sold in February. We sold 65 passes for the parking garage, and I estimate that was probably higher because of weather. I'm starting to see better utilization almost every day. Hewin sold 379 permits in February, with 335 sold same month last year in 2018. Revenue for 2019, January, was $19,289. That was up from January 2018, that was at $16,575. Revenue for 2019 February, $15,593, and this was slightly lower, probably due to weather, than 2018, which February came in at $16,628. There were some minor issues being worked through on the garage, such as we've learned that it makes sense to remove the snow from the second and third floors to prevent the runoff from freezing on the way down. This was occurring. So the last couple of days, they have been removing the snow from the third and second floors. There's been some other problems with drainage pipes having not been heat taped and only insulated, which is causing some problems by freezing. But they're being looked into, along with a pump issue near the water irrigation tanks, all being looked into. But the timing of these faults are probably fitting us well because all this is going to be resolved before the summer or spring-summer surge. So I'm sure by the time the crowds come that the parking garage will be up and running 100%. That's all I've got for parking.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions? Moving right along, Executive Director's Report. Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item is a North Park Drive Lot 3 purchase offer. As you know, the agency received a purchase offer from Black & Black Enterprises LLC for North Park Drive Lot 3 in the amount of $227,500. As you recall, the list price for Lot 3 was $279,000, and the appraised value for Lot 3 was $220,000. The purchase offer is subject to board approval, and if the board approves the sale, closing is scheduled for this Friday, March 22nd.
I would like to make a motion to approve the, what lot is it, Tony?
Lot 3.
The sale of Lot 3 for the $227,500.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Excellent. One lot left?
One lot left.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. $227,500.
Then for initiative updates, Mr. Chairman, just a health corridor master planning initiative. Request for proposals, the RFP for the health corridor has been issued. We're seeking planning firms and teams to develop a master plan and economic feasibility study for the proposed health corridor urban renewal district area. The RFP was released on March 1st with proposals due March 29th. And the anticipated completion date for the master planning process is September 6th. This year, as you recall, we're trying to get this all done in calendar year 2019 if the council would agree to form a district so that we could have the base value being set as January 1st, 2019. So that's how our RFP process and planning process is structured. Just an update on the Memorial Grandstand project. As you recall from last month, the city has selected Walker Construction as the CMGC for the Memorial Grandstand renovation project. Derek Allen of Walker Construction is the lead. Bid opening is planned for March 29th, so the bids are out. So 3:30 on the 29th of March, the bids are due. And we are still, the city is still waiting for any type of confirmed participation from the Idaho Forest Group regarding material donations. And finally, just an update on the North Idaho Collaborative Education Facility Project. Everything seems to be going well, and the facility is scheduled to be completed by late May of this year. And we still have the offer on the table. If anybody wants to, if you want me to arrange a walkthrough prior to its opening, we can arrange for that if you'd like. But it's scheduled to be opening in May.
Excellent.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tony. Next on the agenda is board commissioner comments. Thanks, Sarah, for taking on the ad hoc committee in Midtown. That was good. Well done. Nothing? We have a public comment section now. Any public comment? Absolutely.
My odyssey with Susan Snedeker, my odyssey with Midtown began almost 30 years ago. I can finally put it to bed. Thank you.
Thanks for your patience.
Susie, that's the shortest I've ever seen you make a presentation.
Does that mean you're not going to be here? Any other public comment? Thanks. Greg?
Greg Johnson, Midtown and downtown residents. Questions. Now that we've got this project approved and going to move forward, what was the progress on the 3rd Street parking and the 4th Street parking lot, and looking to purchase properties to line those parking lots up? Would be a question that I have. I don't know where that's at. Because that would be another crucial connection for Midtown. So I guess just an update on that, if there's any progress on that, or if that's in the big picture now that we have the proposed project approved and lined up. Thank you.
Tony, do we have any update on that?
Regarding the 4th Street lot, we'll kind of work that through with the Midtown Ventures proposal and kind of see what opportunities are there as we bring that project forward. As well as far as 3rd Street, I know there are conversations ongoing with adjacent property owners between the city and us, and possibly rationalizing some expanded opportunities on 3rd Street. There's no conclusion yet on those conversations, but that's still in progress.
Okay. And I know we're also still waiting for Hillary's parking projects, so more to come on that, Greg. Any other public comment? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to enter executive session.
I make a motion, we enter executive session under Idaho Code Section 74-206, subsection 1F.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mandel?
Here.
Metz?
Oh, yes, I thought you said Schmitz.
So did I. It's like, who's that?
Looking for who that?
I'm blocking my mic here. Arman?
Yes.
Widmeyer?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Caput?
Yes.
We are in executive session.
We have to do everything for you.
I know.
Sorry.
Jeez, lady.